This is 28 Magazine. In tonight's cover story, Brenda Garton reports on what has become the #1 problem for working mothers, the daycare dilemma. Rick Mason takes us behind the scenes at one of those sawmills you'll see at one time or another when you travel Pennsylvania's rural counties. In our Sports Extra, Sid Michaels spends a day with a legend, Arnold Palmer, in northeastern Pennsylvania to plan and design what else? A golf course. And the best of Gallaghers travels profiles pups who earn their keep herding sheep. Border Collies in Susquehanna County. Hello, everybody. I'm Vic Vetters, and welcome to 28 Magazine. We've been told that 9 out of 10 parents in Luzerne County need daycare, and that's no exaggeration. It's also tonight's cover story, The Daycare Dilemma, with reporter Brenda Garton.
All about it. Freddy's gonna be on TV and miss school and wear his baseball uniform.
20 years ago, this was the typical American family. Rob worked, Laura stayed at home to care for Richie. But if Richie Petrie was around today, he'd probably spend much of his time in a daycare, maybe like this one in the NBC series Day by Day. This make-believe preschool gives creative, convenient, and cost-effective daycare for kids. But what about the real world? With more than half of all young mothers working outside the home, do our kids have a place to go while mom and dad are at work?
This is getting to be a national crisis. We have 65% of women are working with children under 3. So that we're talking of people going back to work and absolutely not being able to find daycare.
In Northeast Pennsylvania, the biggest shortage is in infant care. Romanita Prossman is a seamstress. Her problem is one that many working mothers face. Where can her 6-month-old daughter go while she's on the job?
I've called every one of them in the book, in the yellow pages.
And what have they been telling you?
They're full. They don't have any openings right now, or they do not take children this young.
Until this couple finds a solution, Dad stays home to babysit.
Deciding on daycare is not an easy decision. Parents must weigh the emotions of guilt and the demands of their career with what's best for their little one.
I had hoped that I could stay home, but today both parents have to work, so that's why, we chose what we did.
They chose daycare. Joan and Jay Ropetsky represent about half of all couples with young children. They're faced with juggling careers, with wanting a family. Shopping for daycare isn't easy, especially for the single parent. For all parents, it will most likely be the most difficult decision they'll ever make. Finding the right daycare center for you and your child can be a lengthy search.
I looked for staff that was friendly, knowledgeable.
Not too many places take infants, so that was a big part. And
I wanted a daycare center that gave her individual attention.
Whether it's deciding on a neighborhood babysitter or a state-run preschool, finding a situation that makes you and your child happy takes time and research. Here's a checklist that may help. What kind of reputation does it have? Are there good sanitation practices? Is there plenty of food, and is it nutritious? Is the staff well trained? Does it keep progress records? What are its child sickness policies? Is it in a good location? And how much does it cost? On the average, daycare costs about $4,000 a year. It's generally the second highest expense on a couple's budget, only second to housing. Director of Child Development for Northeast Pennsylvania, Evelyn Gertz, says don't just shop over the phone. Visit the center.
And any center that says you can't go in, be suspicious. Get the smell of it. There's a feeling in a center. There's literally a smell in some centers that you wouldn't approve of.
When deciding on daycare, parents must weigh the facts with their feelings. Gut instinct plays an important role.
Saying goodbye to your baby. It's a scene played out every morning with most all mothers who work outside the home. They leave their child in the hands of someone else.
My first day, she did fine. I was a basket case.
Even after parents find what they feel is the ideal daycare situation, separation is still hard.
As he got older, the guilt didn't lessen, it got worse in a way because he was able to understand, now mommy's leaving me here, and would look at you with those little boy eyes and start crying.
What are you doing? Playing? What's that?
The guilt can be overwhelming for parents, especially on mothers.
Today I went there and they said she took 2 steps for the first time, and that was the first time she ever, well, she's taken 1 at home but never 2, so probably tomorrow I'll go there and they'll tell me she walked for the first time.
Many children across the country see caregivers more often than their own parents. And while many argue that child care is detrimental to a child's growth, Lori Belair's says putting her daughter in daycare has been a very positive experience.
I think it's been one of the wisest decisions I've ever made. She has no brothers or sisters, for one thing, and she's learned to interact with other children. She's learned how to share, how to play.
Whether you agree with it or not, mothers are a major part in the workforce. And by the year 2000, just 12 years away, 75% of all families will have both parents working outside the home.
With more and more mothers choosing to work outside the home, how will our children be cared for in the future? Most daycare centers are already crowded, the workers underpaid, and the cost keeps going up. Many child development experts say government and businesses must become involved in raising our kids.
The federal government is going to help, and employers are going to have to help. I think they will see that as a responsibility to both recruit and retain employees.
But is it a company's responsibility to pay for your child's care? And should taxpayers take the burden of paying for daycare?
Those questions have become an issue in the presidential race. Here's how the candidates stand on government-sponsored daycare. Democratic frontrunner Michael Dukakis wants to have a nationwide program similar to the one he brought to his home state. He says government and businesses should help pay for daycare. Republican frontrunner George Bush, however, says government shouldn't nor can afford to help pay for daycare services. But he believes Congress, the states, and the private sector should examine tax credits for daycare centers. Also a future concern, caregivers' salaries. On the average, a daycare worker makes about $10,000 a year. Their wages are ranked among the lowest in the country.
The mothers were never paid. And so we inherit that system that anyone who's taking care of children doesn't have to be paid. We pay plumbing bills that are twice as high as what we pay our child care staff. That's the insanity of where we have come from.
But where are we going? With daycare and family issues among the top discussions in the presidential race, the answers will fall in the hands of our elected leaders. And this coming election day, an estimated 10 million more women than men will be eligible to vote. Brenda Garton, 28 Magazine.
One child care expert told us not a day goes by without someone calling and asking how to open a daycare center. It's possible someday there will be one on every street corner. Up next on 28 Magazine, behind the scenes at one of Pennsylvania's hundreds of sawmills. Pennsylvania has more than 1,000 sawmills, and it seems like most of them are in Sullivan County. Reporter Rick Mason and photographer Tim Burke take us behind the scenes at a mill in Hillsgrove, where the day always begins with a cry of timber.
Hardwoods, they're the backbone of Pennsylvania's logging industry. The larger operations send in their industry foresters to size up a stand for the harvest. The forester eyes up the trees, typically picking only those between 40 and 80 years old, and marks them for the chainsaw. Then the logger moves in for the cutting. This black cherry had a relatively average life.
I count 81 rings. This tree would have originated when this area was originally cut off, about 1900 to 1910.
The timber industry in Pennsylvania doesn't do any planting. It relies solely on nature to handle the regeneration. The seedlings will have more room as the mature timbers are dragged from their forest home. Before long, they'll be giving life to many conveniences we find useful. This tree was felled about 35 miles from the mill. Getting it there requires manpower and machinery. In this state, logging and milling provide jobs for 83,000 people. These logs are destined for the Dwight Lewis Lumber Company at Hillsgrove. Sons Mark and Mel Lewis run the operation that their dad started nearly a half-century ago. When the logs arrive, they're unloaded, then measured and graded. From this point, every bit of the tree is used. The first milling process skins the logs in the debarking machine. The bark itself is sold for garden mulch. As the logs move into the mill, they're lined up to wait their turn at the head saw. The huge circular saw blade easily slices off slabs to square up the logs. The side slabs, as they're called, are sold to a paper mill where they'll be turned into tissues and toilet paper. Even the sawdust has a use. It's sold to farmers for livestock bedding. If you stop and listen for a moment, the mill sounds and feels like a freight train zipping by. These sights and sounds give you some idea of the industry's present outlook, moving.
The lumber industry has been real good the last several years, just as the rest of the economy's been. Pretty good sales and prices have been coming up.
This mill produces 4.5 million board feet of lumber each year.
That figures up it would probably furnish about 3,000 homes in furniture.
Unlike people, boards can be whipped into shape in a matter of minutes, just by shaving off the sides and the edger, and trimming the ends in the double-end trimmer. Here, each board is measured up into one of 7 categories. A clear board free of knots gets the top grading. Downstairs, outside, the boards are stacked according to grade. The highest grades will be used in furniture and cabinets. Lesser grades may be made to walk on in flooring. The lowest are turned into pallets. The stacks are then moved out for short-term storage. Most of the wood at this mill is shipped out green. Most of it is used in Pennsylvania and New York. Some goes as far away as Ireland and Japan. Lumber is an integral part of a flourishing economy. But it not only helps the living, it also helps the dying. This particular load of cherry wood I'm sitting on is destined for a casket factory in southeastern Pennsylvania. Rick Mason for 28 Magazine.
Cherry wood can be restful, but most of the wood from the Lewis Mill winds up as furniture, and most of that on the showroom floors of Pennsylvania House Furniture. Next up on 28 Magazine, the legend, Pennsylvania's Arnold Palmer. Arnold Palmer was in northeastern Pennsylvania this month to plan and design an 18-hole championship golf course at Eagle Rock Resort near Shepton. It was a special day for golfer Sid Michaels, who had a chance to spend some time with a legend.
Simply put, Arnold Palmer is golf. From the time he broke on the PGA scene in 1955, winning the Canadian Open, Palmer has become the most recognizable face and name ever to play the game. He's won 61 times on the tour, including the Masters 4 times. Among his 19 foreign victories, the British Open in 1960 and 61. He also totals 9 senior PGA Tour wins. Through all that, he says there's not one single thing that stands out above all else.
I would like to think there are a lot of things. I can think of a lot of good, think of a few golf shots I hit that weren't so good, but overall I'm very thankful for what has happened in my career.
Through 33 years and 89 victories, Arnold Palmer has won just over $2.7 million. Now consider this. Lanny Watkins, who was a winner at the recent Colonial Invitational, has 19 wins in 17 seasons, and he has earned over $3 million. Does Palmer have any regrets about coming along too early?
Certainly there's a big difference between the kind of money we played for when I first started versus today. But I have no regrets, really. I've enjoyed what has happened. I enjoyed the opportunity to go play and have all the things happen that have happened to me.
Arnold Palmer says that as the total purses have changed drastically, the players have changed only slightly.
Different? I don't think so. I think we have a lot of good golfers out there playing right now, and their objectives are probably a little more directed in the direction of playing professional golf, and that's it. In the early days when I started, players were playing professionally, but they were also running club jobs too. So That's a major difference now.
Palmer was a dominant force on the tour in his prime, something that has been absent for the past few years. But he feels the days of that dominant player will come back.
I think we'll see the same thing happen again as happened in the past. I feel like golf moves in cycles, and as everything else does. And we're seeing right now a lot of different winners on the tour. I think that'll come back to where we'll see some people that will dominate. It may not be one person, but it'll be a small number of people that will kind of hold the titles to themselves for a while.
These days, Arnold Palmer's life is more business than life on the tour. Recently in Hazleton, he talked about his business side, that of designing golf courses. It started way back in 1960 when he and his dad joined forces in designing a course in his hometown of Latrobe, Pennsylvania.
I was always urging him to do something, and he had a desire to do it. He was at Latrobe all his life. It was the only golf club he ever worked in, and he had a desire to build 18 holes.
The course at Eagle Rock Resort in Hazleton is one of a number done by Palmer and his company, and he has some specific goals in mind. The longest hole on this 7,000-yard golf course will be a 561-yard par 5. Even at that distance, Arnold Palmer says this will be a course that the championship golfer or the everyday golfer can enjoy. The challenge is to design a course for everyone.
The golf course design business can be very challenging and is to a great degree, doing everything from environment to providing a golf course that is a good test of golf and at the same time something that everyone can go out and enjoy.
For years, excellence was Arnold Palmer's goal on the PGA Tour. Now it's his goal as he rises to the top of the business world.
Arnie is Pennsylvania proud. Up next, the particular pride of the Border Collie in the best of Gallaghers Travels. Down through the centuries, Scottish farmers have searched for the perfect herding animal. They finally found what they were looking for through careful breeding in the Border Collie. Tonight, in the best of Gallaghers Travels, Dan takes us to a farm in Susquehanna County to see these magnificent animals at work.
The kids had always been around to help chase the sheep and help do the things that are necessary to have a sheep farm, and so they decided to go to college, and there I am out chasing sheep by myself, and we needed some help. We needed some dogs.
Walt Jagger got his first Border Collie about 20 years ago. He was so impressed with the animal that it wasn't long before he started breeding his own champion line. Today, Walt and his daughter Cheryl devote all their time to training these dogs in the art of herding.
We think that the only way to have a dog work for you is to be a partner with it. We believe that a great deal of love and affection is necessary to make the dog work for you, and certainly feel that we never saw anything hurt with too much love.
Just about any Border Collie of good breeding is born with that instinct to herd, but it doesn't happen overnight. To get to a point where a dog can exhibit this much control, it takes months of training and dedication.
We start with voice commands primarily, and basically I use a lot of body language. I move with the dog, and I ask the dog to balance on the sheep, which essentially is just developing its own instinct, bringing it out. And then I add commands to it, verbal commands. I'll come by for a left-hand side or away to me for a right-hand side, and I'll just add the commands to it. I'll teach him a down, I'll teach him to walk up. Then we'll add the whistle commands and just essentially make the whistle the same command as the verbal command was.
During a typical year, the Jagger family will be out on the road competing at about 20 different trials throughout the United States and Canada. The prize money they take home doesn't even come close to covering their expenses. But they say it's love for these animals, not money, that keeps them going.
I think the thrill that you receive from running the dogs and competing is the fact that you yourself have created a great deal of this dog's ability. You have created a great deal of the control that's necessary for it to perform, and you can get satisfaction just from seeing it run.
The Jaggers say it's a thrill to go up against other top breeders and to know that your dogs are among the best in the country. But the love and respect they feel for these animals far outweigh any championships they might win.
It's a very strong art form. When you see a dog really coming in and doing all those things that you've trained so long to do, and you see them moving and every little movement with the sheep causing the dog to just move just to the right place at the right time, it just really makes you feel like you've really accomplished something in your life to see that happen.
Reporting for 28 Magazine, I'm Dan Gallagher. And next month, Dan will report on his trip to Ireland. And also, for the first time, 28 Magazine will be seen in prime time. It's Wednesday, June 29th at 9:30. For everybody at 28 Magazine, I'm Vic Vetters. We'll see you then.